State Representative Jim Townsend is with us. He's in Santa Fe. He's got some more special session work to do today, and we've been talking about the redistricting plan, which is the primary reason for the special session that's going on right now in Santa Fe. So the Senate passed this thing. You've been getting a lot of phone calls. I'm sure other folks have been getting phone calls. Where are we at in the districting process? What is happening now?
Okay, right now, the House district maps passed the House, and the Senate Judiciary Committee met yesterday looking at the Senate maps. They made some changes to the Senate maps, their own Senate maps, and that, what I have been told, that has riled the governor. She's mattering with him, saying she'll veto it. Speaker Egoff is saying he won't let him pass through the House. The tribal community is mad because they think it has diluted their influence on the process. And so there's a lot of consternation over in the Senate right now. I suspect the Senate maps will go to the Senate floor sometime today. And I have no idea what the end result will be of that map. But if they do pass the map that the Senate themselves wanted, and that was a product of the Democratic leadership in the Senate introducing in the Senate Judiciary Committee, if they pass that map, the Speaker, I'm told, has said that he will not let it go through the House. And the governor said if he does, he's going to veto it. So that's a problem. On top of that, the Senate did, I think, a really good thing. They found a small savings of about $25 million that was in the HB2. They struck it from HB2, and I think that has caused old Billy Hell to break loose too. I mean, how would they ever, use their own minds to make logical conclusions? So it's been kind of entertaining how, there used to be, and most people think they're just Republicans and Democrats up here. And there is two partisan, political bodies. But within those groups, you have unique pods of people, and they have control on different things. I mean, you have the Senate Democrat, Senator Mimi Stewart made a change to the Senate maps. That was a good change, but it happened to benefit two Republicans. And now you got the governor throwing a fit upstairs, and you got Speaker Egoff stomping around in the House. So, I mean, it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Do you see, regardless of what eventually passes, because something's going to pass, the governor's going to sign something, people are not going to be happy with it. Do you see it standing, or do you see there being legal challenges to whatever comes out of this special session?
After seeing the process of the congressional maps, I think there's a high likelihood that will be challenged in court. You cannot sue the majority just because they gerrymandered, because as you and I both know, gerrymandering happens everywhere. And
right.
With a party, I mean,
that's right.
Not just, it happens everywhere. But there are distinct rules and processes. You have the Voter Act, you have a Supreme Court decision on protecting 6 House seats for the tribal communities, and I think 3 Senate seats. But I think it will be challenged, and I think it must be challenged.
Well, that's interesting, because that's more cost and more time to.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't see how you can avoid it because you only get to do this every 10 years. And if you don't take a stand now, it could permanently change the landscape of politics in New Mexico, which is already, if you're a conservative or a Republican, is a difficult position to be in anyway right now.
Well, it is, and you have. I mean, the facts are that the Democrat majority has been in control of New Mexico for almost a century. Now, there have been like 8 years of Republican governors, but at the same time, you had Democratic-controlled House and Senate where, really hamstrung the governor. But, it's time that we do something that causes a positive change, something that causes New Mexico to be all New Mexico can be and should be. I mean, we're sitting on wonderful resources. We have a gorgeous state geographically. We have diverse cultural differences that we all enjoy.
Right. Right.
We really do. I do. And why we have to get so, why we let such an influence, such a progressive influence, and a lot of this is, it's New York, California, Washington, D.C. politics that some people say in the political world that New Mexico is a petri dish. When some of these very progressive people want to try something new, they can pass almost anything in New Mexico, and let's see if it works.
Yeah, well, more often than not, it doesn't. But I mean, you're right, because it could be Hollywood and oil and gas. It could be wind and solar and nuclear, along with our extractive industries. We could be the provider of energy to California. And think of how much money the state of New Mexico would make if we did something like that. But we're so on a different path on all of this. When you saw go ahead. So I'm sorry, Jim.
What's really important is, you're right, we could be, but what is more important in my mind is we should be.
Right.
I mean, it'd be good for the nation if we were.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. The map that the committees came out with, and a lot of people that were asked to be a part of these committees said, why should we be a part of these committees? You're not going to pay any attention to this anyway. Did you see those recommendations, and were they a little more reasonable when it comes to the congressional seats and so forth, or were they pretty well influenced in an interesting way?
That's a very interesting question. Representative Jason Harper, who is a scientist at Sandia Labs, is kind of our brainchild in the legislature. I mean, he's a nuclear engineer or something, doctor of nuclear engineer, whatever.
Right.
But he always looks at things statistically. He had the demographers come up with the most Democrat map they could possibly look at, the most Republican map they could possibly look at, and then a map that is pure statistical, a purely statistical map that shows there was no gerrymandering, that the best interest of New Mexico. And what is funny or sad is the one that he had drawn that was "Don't mess with me," just a pure statistical map, looked very similar to the maps A, B, C, and D that Brian Sanderoff and his team put together before they started getting all this help. And the one that was the most progressive map, the one that had all the D districts in it you could, look very much like what we got. So to say that the Citizens Redistricting Committee had any influence this year, that's absolutely untrue. I believe the maps that we have and that we're voting on come straight out of the tribal community, and it is a progressive Democrat map that the legislative leadership worked on. We know there were 21 changes made to it. Districts were redrawn, and I believe, unfortunately, many people foresaw this as being the outcome, and they were right. This work, quite frankly, was for naught.
And that's such a shame, because on the surface it sounds great. We're not going to like it. There's not going to be everything in here that you want. There's going to be some things that other people want, but it's a compromise of sorts to get us to the point that we need to be. Is there any talk at all with any of your colleagues, anybody from the other side, to say, let's just go back to the original Citizens Committee map and move this one forward? Or what are you hearing from, I know there's a lot of opposition on the Republican side, but now that these are out, what are you hearing from some of the other legislators there?
There are many of the conservative Democrats that oppose the map. But if they want to hold their committee positions and having their senior positions in their caucus, they have to follow the leadership of Brian Egoff, or they'll be stripped of those, I believe.
Yeah, and that's the power that they have, because was that a senator or a House member that went to independent here in the last week or so? That was a Senate. That was Senator Candelaria. Right, and not that he was getting ready to switch to Republican, but I think what I read that he said was he was just tired of being told this is how it's going to be. He wanted to make his own decision on how he was going to vote.
I remember last year on a couple of occasions when we had a very bipartisan vote, and the speaker immediately called for a recess, took his caucus out of the chambers, came back in 30 minutes, and every one of them changed their vote. Wow. And that's recorded. I mean, that you can go watch it if you don't believe me.
Yeah, no. We've heard the story. It's sad that it's true on that. And have you ever, because you've been in the legislature now, how many years?
Going on 8 years.
8 years. Have you seen it this under one thumb control in the 8 years that you've been in the legislature?
No, this is the worst I've ever seen it. I mean, you always see a little bit of it. I mean, and truly on both sides of the aisle, you see the power plays, but I have never seen it as blatant as it is this year.
Wow. So what's next? Where are we going now? You kind of touched on it a little bit. If they can't get their act together over in the Senate, does that mean you guys in the House just kind of sit around, or are there other things that are on this special session call that are being worked on right now?
The only maps we have left to do are the Senate maps and the PEC maps, Public Education Commission maps.
Okay.
The PEC maps will take about 5 minutes. So we're going to sit around and twiddle our thumbs in the House until the Senate gets their act done. And so that's where we're at.
And you don't see any dissent happening on the House side? In other words, when Speaker Egoff accepts whatever it is that comes over, the Democrats are all going to line up and support it, as far as you can tell?
Absolutely. I don't think they'll. I mean, Candy Sweetser out of Deming broke ranks the other night. Willie Madrid, I think, broke ranks the other night. He's down in the Boot Hill country. But the rest of them just toe the line. Yeah. Well, that's a shame. And Candy's not even in the radio business anymore. She sold her radio station. So I know she did. I like Candy. She's always been great. People you can converse with, you can work with, you can talk to. So what can we do, Representative Townsend? Where are we at right now? What can we do to help? Well, I think the people of Southeast New Mexico need to let their voice be heard. And I think the citizens of Southeast New Mexico ought to put a note on their calendar and remember this day. You know, voters in New Mexico quite often quickly forget. They hear the last narrative, and that's what they react on. They need to remember that the oil and gas, the agricultural community in Southeast New Mexico was harmed during this legislative session. That those people, wouldn't it be funny if this plan to fortify every one of those congressional districts backfired on them. And all of a sudden we had a representative from Southeast New Mexico or with Southeast New Mexico values. Another one, we had Yvette Harrell win her race, another one in CD2 win, or 3. I think it would be hilarious if when somebody goes out and tries to bastardize a system as this group has done, if it really backfired on them and the people had their voices heard.
It would be an amazing turn of events, and 2022 is going to, 2022 is going to be an interesting year because it is a midterm year.
Yep.
And it's also the governor is up for re-election.
Yep.
And she's decided she wants to reduce our gross receipts tax bill just a little tiny little bit. But I don't know that's going to. You're right, though. Are people going to remember? Because we were talking with the barking guy last hour. It was a year ago, Jim, that we were standing in line outdoors, waiting to be allowed in to buy groceries.
Yeah.
Because of the way the governor has handled things in the pandemic. Lana told me the other day, did you know she extended the mask mandate? And I said, well, not around here. So are people going to remember these things, Jim? Or I guess that's the challenge for the folks that are in, such as yourself, as we get ready for these midterm elections coming up, to remember all of these things that we've been through for the last 2 years.
I think the people of New Mexico ought to call every one of their representatives, including myself, to task and say, what did you represent? What'd you vote for? How'd you do it? What did you say on the House floor? Did you stand for our values? And vote for those people that did, and don't vote for those that don't.
Yep.
That's the way the system works.
That's right. Anything else you'd like to share with us, Jim, before we wrap up?
No, I think probably this process has never needed prayer more than it does today. And I would ask people to remember the process and to remember their legislators and pray for them and ask them for guidance and will and knowledge.
Excellent advice. State Representative Jim Townsend, thank you so much for your time.
Bet.
Keep fighting the good fight for us up there.
You bet. See you later.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. So we appreciate Representative Townsend and his time, his description of what's going on in the legislative session, everything that we're dealing with right now. And I think he's exactly right. It is time for prayer or anything else in addition to that we can bring to bear to try to stop this from being such a bad deal for those of us that live in this part of the state. Hey.